Miss Leslie, you're charged with interference with law enforcement, no proof of insurance, no driver's license, and failure to register vehicle. Do you understand the charges?
I comprehend the alleged charges against me.
Thank you, Miss Leslie. Miss Leslie, you do have the right to counsel. If you cannot afford an attorney,
Excuse me. I was going to say that I comprehend the certain statutory allegations that have been made against me, but I cannot and do not admit to understanding or accepting the jurisdiction of this court over my person or the subject matter absent proof of corpus delicti and a verified complainant from an injured party.
Okay, are you currently employed?
For the record, Your Honor, just to start from the beginning, I, Sydney Taylor Leslie, appearing specially and not generally in propria persona, sui juris, as a living woman and not as a legal fiction or corporate entity, I reserve all rights without prejudice pursuant to UCC 1-308. Let the record reflect that my appearance today is under explicit protest and duress and solely for the purpose of challenging jurisdiction and preserving my unalienable rights. And Your Honor, before these proceedings advance further, I must respectfully challenge this court's jurisdiction in toto and move for immediate dismissal of all charges. I hereby invoke the burden-shifting doctrine which places the affirmative burden upon the prosecutor. Jurisdiction is the fundamental prerequisite to all jurisdictional proceedings. The legal maxim ex injuria just non autora, law does not arise from injustice, applies to these proceedings in their entirety.
Okay, and the court finds that Miss Leslie is appearing as a sovereign citizen before the court, and the court once again.
I object to any of that derogatory. It's very biased. I move for immediate dismissal on those grounds and disqualification.
Court overrules the motion for dismissal of the case. Court
On-
overrules dismissal of the case.
prejudice.
The court does find it has jurisdiction to proceed, and subsequently the court
I
sets your next
object. You
appearance
called me
date.
a sovereign citizen. I object. You called me a sovereign citizen.
Yes, ma'am.
That is prejudice and bias.
No prejudice or bias is asserted
Immediate
as to
dismissal of my
yourself.
case.
However, the court, as opposed to trying to write down docket notes to that effect, is just recognizing what you are advising the court, that the court has no jurisdiction over you, and based on your statement made to the court. Subsequently, the court does find you've posted a $3,000 cash bond. Court does accept the same, and the court does schedule this matter next before Judge Webster. The court does find that she has posted bond in the amount of $3,000 cash. Any other matters to come before the court, Mr. Sweeney?
No, Your Honor.
And Miss Leslie?
Your Honor, my jurisdictional challenge is predicated upon multiple independent grounds, each sufficient to warrant dismissal. First, I challenge personal jurisdiction pursuant to Kansas rule. I appear specially, not generally, and have not consented to this court's jurisdiction. The record before this court is devoid of evidence establishing proper jurisdiction over my person as a living woman rather than a legal fiction or corporate entity, as distinguished in Hale v. Hinkle in 1906, and recognizing Kansas jurisprudence. Second, I challenge subject matter jurisdiction pursuant to Kansas Rule of Civil Procedure. The perpetrated charges arise from actions of agents of the state acting under a color of law. Third, I challenge territorial jurisdiction. The alleged incident occurred after I had ceased operating my conveyance and was exercising my unalienable right to travel, placing it outside the territorial jurisdiction of traffic enforcement. May it please the court, for the record, I must now enter an oral objection and motion for disqualification of the presiding judicial officer during a prior proceeding, specifically this court referred to me by the term sovereign citizen, a pejorative classification which carries with its government manufactured implications of extremism, frivolous, and legal irrelevance. This label, unprovoked and unsupported by any factual predicate, constitutes a stigmatizing judicial characterization that violates my right to a neutral and detached tribunal. Wherefore, I respectfully move this honorable court to dismiss all charges with prejudice for lack of jurisdiction, issue a finding that the prosecution has failed to meet its burden of establishing jurisdiction, order the immediate return of all my property seized, including the 251 USD, confiscated and converted to a reloadable Visa card without my consent, order the expungement and permanent sealing of every associated record, award compensation for the full measure of damages sustained, including costs for my automobile window repair, bail costs, and compensation for unlawful detention and deprivation of liberty, grant such and other further relief as this court deems just and proper. I reserve all rights without prejudice, waive none, and maintain my special appearance for the sole purpose of challenging jurisdiction and preserving my alienable rights as secured by the Constitution for the United States of America.
And once again, matter is set before Judge Webster on Monday, August 11, 2025, 9 a.m. by Zoom.